uh, awesome game that we won versus the Titans. Man, I tell you what, that was an amazing game. Super excited to see us come out the way we did. I mean, we played with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. So, guys, let's get into it. So, guys, as you know, I'm actually been traveling, so I'm no longer in Utah. I'm actually here in Arizona. So, I'm back in the duck room, trying to move things around, trying to get my office set up, ready to go. So, it's going to be a little bit wonky for a bit, guys. Awesome shirt on here. I know Richie Rich, I really appreciate this one. But again, guys, if you like what you see here, like and subscribe. Definitely want to continue getting the content out to some more folks. So, guys, let's get into the transcript of this game because there's some really good notes. I was really impressed with not only the way that our team competed, but the way that we battled through a lot of adversity. Quite frankly, I mean, it was awesome to see what we did as a team. But Brandon Staley had some really good notes here. I want to kind of go through and really get your thoughts on, you know, what happened, how the game progressed, and how the game really, evolved during the game. But I would say right now, man, I think these last two games, again, I said it on our game pregame, postgame show on Monday with James. Uh, Brandon Staley has really impressed me these last two games. Right, I feel like in a weird way, everything's coming together for him as a coach, and he in the entire coaching staff. Now, I still feel like Lombardi's a little bit um, out of his element to some degree, but I do also believe that he's Brandon Staley is helping him with the coaching decisions on some of the play calls, right? So I think that's been a really good, a nice change to see Brandon Staley step in a little bit more on the offense, and so we're seeing some nice improvements on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, this game didn't really have a lot of offense specifically, but we'll go into that a little bit more. I really felt like they tried to run the ball a little too much, and I think they got themselves a little bit out of rhythm. Some of the notes he talks a little bit about that. We'll moving on. So let's talk about injuries at this point first. First and foremost, obviously there were some injuries that we need to discuss. Joey Bosa has definitely been injured. We all know that, right? His return is, TBD at this point. And Derwin James, to be honest with you, I actually think he might not play this game at all versus the Colts. His recovery is coming back. I really don't think he's going to play this next game versus the Colts. I mean, he might, but what's the point, right? And what's the point of bringing Joey Bosa back now as well, too? In my mind, these next three games are very winnable with the team that we have now. Now, they may suit them up, maybe say, hey, give it a shot. What do you guys think? But we'll go from there. There's a few other injuries that we do want to discuss here as well as Austin Eckler. So he apparently had a shoulder injury that he hurt during the Miami game. And so I think he re-aggravated again during the Titans game. So, but apparently, the MRI was negative. He should be fine. Josh Palmer, this one was a bit of a concern to me, but apparently he's fine too, which is great. So I would assume that these guys are probably going to be very limited practice this week, and they'll be ready to go, versus the Colts on Monday, which is nice because you'll have an extra day. I know that's was highlighted here with Derwin James. So, but again, these two injuries, there's another one too, Joe Gaziano. Groin injury, the Italian Stallion had a great game, guys. I mean, look, it could be so easy to just get frustrated with the situation that, we've had all these defensive lines injuries, but man, these guys have stepped up. And, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, with the culture, the nature, what Brandon has created, what this coaching staff has done. But it's really good to see. And it's interesting seeing people like, Keemon Hall having hamstring injuries week to week on that one. But look, we're not seeing players like key name players really being hurt any further, right? I actually think Derwin James probably could have played last week. Probably could have played. Definitely could play on Monday, I do believe. And they probably could rush Joey Bosa back. But since we won those two games versus Miami and Tennessee, it's like, well, what's the point, right? I mean, our team that we have on the field now is playing great football. Why jinx it? So I think they're going to take time to get some of these players back. Again, right now we're in the playoff position. My brother's going to be doing a video on that tomorrow. But again, guys, it's exciting to see where we're sitting right now as a team. And again, a lot of what we're seeing about this team is resilience. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well, too. So let's talk about the offensive performance. So this goes into, again, guys, I was traveling from Vegas. I was literally on the road. We had bits and pieces of service. But one of the things I do remember them talking about specifically is that the Chargers wanted to run the football, and they really did. And they did on the first drive, and specifically Joshua Kelly obviously scored a touchdown. But the thing is, I think they stuck with the run a little too long, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a reason why you want to run the ball, because you can start working play action. And we did try to do a lot of play action during the game as well. To rewatch the game, you could tell they were trying to make the play action work. But unfortunately, when they don't respect the run, they're not going to respect the play action a whole lot. So it doesn't really open up, shots down the field. And of course, teams that play against Justin Herbert and this particular offense do not want those shots down the field. So they're trying to minimize the big play. And it's pretty simple, right? It's really interesting. But again, short yardage runs were good. I think there were some larger ones that were out of rhythm. I mean, there was a reverse that didn't go very well, and there was just some weird little things that they're still struggling with. Now, I would give the argument, guys. What do you guys think? It really seems like a lot of this is largely because there's three rookies on that offensive line, right? You got Zion Johnson, um, Jamari Sawyer, and then you also have, well, technically Trey Pipkins was out there as well. So, but Pipkins, this was really his first year being, the right tackle, right? But just the cohesiveness on that line has just not really been there, right? And so it's really been interesting to see, how kind of out of sync we have been to some degree, right? But I do think that, the negative plays were a bad situation. Um, Again, it's one of those situations where you sit back and ask yourself this question: okay, what did we do wrong? Well, look, we're playing a very good Tennessee defense, right? Their defense is a very good defense every year. Yes, they've had plenty of injuries, but they are still a very well coached defense. I mean, that team, I view them a lot like the Steelers or the Ravens, right? They just run the ball first and play good defense, right? So they have a lot of good defensive players, even with those injuries. And again, just like what Brandon Staley said here, just wasn't great synergy yesterday. And that's some truth there, right? Herbert had it when he needed to have it to win the game, but really, really interesting. So that's why we only got 14 or 17 points, right? Really interesting situation. But yeah, this was kind of interesting. I was kind of surprised to see that they didn't challenge this, but there was a little bit of movement on the ball. That's why they didn't challenge the ball. And that's ultimately what Brandon Staley says right here. That look, at the end of the day, there was low movement, probably not a good challenge. So this is interesting. I really like what Brandon Staley says specifically about the defense's ability to perform at a high level without Derwin James. And again, when he went down, I was very concerned. I think that's when a lot of our fan base, and myself included, started getting a little nervous. We're like, oh my God, we're losing Derwin James. We don't have Bosa out there. J.C. Jackson, who knows what's happening after everything that's happening to him right now. I think he's in jail at this moment. Who knows what his situation is going to be moving forward, but very interesting situation here. But it goes to show you the character of this team, and everyone just says next man up. And again, you hear that all the time in football, but boy, this team is really showing that it's next man up, and they're doing such a great job. Right now, I would say with the people that are out there, Nas had almost a nearly perfect PFF score from this last game. And I was like, wow, Nas Adderley, nearly a perfect PFF score, which is incredible to see, right? So, but it's great. But you're seeing guys like Jasir Taylor, a rookie. The one thing I will always say about this too, guys, these are the people that, again, our safety play up to these last 2 weeks has not been good, in my opinion. I really feel like Alohi and Nas have just kind of been all over the map. They're okay, but they're just not doing great. But man, they have stepped up, right? And I'll tell you, with these guys, and again, you still got J.T. Woods that's sitting on the sidelines, right? He's still there trying to get better and understanding the game, looking at film, seeing things, understanding coverages, understanding what to do. These guys are finally stepping up. So it'll be really interesting to see, what's going, through there. But obviously, Raheem Lane played a little bit, which I thought was really interesting. In a few sub packages. Pretty interesting to see some of these other guys out there, right? And with Tannehill, you kind of know he's not going to throw the ball a whole lot, right? That's just not what he does. I think we only limited to almost 160 yards total passing. So, my view is, hey, we did a great job of even limiting what he can do moving forward, right? So it'll be really interesting to see how this is going to be. It's good to see these guys step up and the way that the defense has filled in behind Derwin James. But I think the argument can also be made that Derwin James has made the defense better. He's coached them up. He's shown them great leadership, and they've become better players in his absence. So it's good to see. Again, we want Derwin James back. If I had to make a guess, I'd probably say he won't play this Monday. So we'll see how that plays out. Anyways, kind of a funny little story here, right? I guess they ambushed him. He's recanting a story about them winning without Derwin James. He said, I kind of ambushed him the other day at the Miami game. We did something the other night that was amazing. And he thought he was going to say something completely, but he's like, we won without you. Because you guys got to understand, Derwin James is a leader, and he continues to describe how he energizes the team, keeps everybody happy. And look, not only is he a great football player and just a general amazing athlete, an amazing person too, by the way. I don't know if you've seen what he does off the field, but Derwin James is that guy that is just a fantastic human being. I think it was 2 or 3 weekends ago. I think he was nominated for, I think it was the Man of the Year, or the Football Player of the Year, some sort of awards. He goes, the amount of give back that he does is mind blowing. He says every week during the offseason, he's out there visiting people, fans, and sick kids, and really just giving back to the community. So you really have to say, not only is Derwin James an amazing football player for this team, he's an amazing leader, right? Which is huge. But secondarily, he's an amazing human being that's giving back to his community. You have to give him so many kudos for that, because it's so big. It's so big seeing what he can do and have him improve as a human being, right? So again, those are the people I want to follow, and those are the people that I want to respect as well too, because they're giving back to their community and making life better for everybody around them. So at any rate, it's good to see, his leadership be a little bit, cohesive for the rest of the team, and really proliferate to the rest of the team, the members, when he's not there. So anyways, now this is really good. This right here, this is a paragraph I want to sit on for a little bit, because it talks how Brandon Staley personally has been able to navigate the roller coaster of this season. And guys, make no mistake about it, it's been an absolute roller coaster this season, right? We've seen everything that's happened with, all of our injuries. And this gives a really good insight, not only to football and how to navigate a tough season, because every season's tough. Every season's tough, guys. Let's make no mistake about it. There is never going to be a perfect season. I mean, there's a few teams out there right now that just have no injuries. I mean, the Titans had 3 or 4 injuries. Tannehill was even brought out, carted off at the beginning of the game. Again, I didn't even see that injury until after the fact, but you have to keep a positive mental attitude. If you don't do that, you are in big trouble, right? And look where we're at now, guys. We're in a playoff position. So what is some of the insight that Brandon Staley says about getting through this negative roller coaster of this season? He said, believe in myself, believe in that, and that you're that belief in the people that you're with every day, the coaches, the players, the organization. I trust the people that when we're at as a competitor, you're always improving, something I pride myself in. And that's a really good point, right? It's one of those things that you have to definitely make sure you have to believe in yourself ultimately, right? And again, and you got to stay poised, you got to stay positive, and, really just make sure you have a positive mental attitude. And that really proliferates into the team in general, right? And that's a big thing, right? And I like how he talks specifically about Justin Herbert here, right? He said, hey, he's the same guy the first day when he walked in there, and he's just getting better. Hopefully I have a lot of faith in myself, a lot of confidence in myself. I will say this, guys. He has become a very good head coach, right? This is his second season. I personally saw a lot with Brandon Staley. I think Brandon Staley has solidified himself as the head coach for the Chargers. Could be for a very long time, right? He might get a contract extension. Guys, we're paying him $1 million a year. $1 million a year. It took us a long time and a lot of digging to even find that salary. He got a $4 million contract over 4 years, right? So he's probably going to get a new contract, and we'll see how that plays out. So it'll be interesting to see how he's, how that's going to play out moving forward, right? Defense hitting their stride. One of the things talked about for the last 2 weeks is really, making this defense match up on a lot of different styles. Because you have to think about it, moving forward, right? Miami and Tennessee, as this article say, very different teams, right? Miami's a finesse team with speed. Tennessee is more of a smash mouth team that's just going to run the ball down your throat, throw the ball occasionally. And they could not be more different, right? But the thing that I have liked about Brandon Staley's, they've been able to match things up with, again, not our best personnel, right? So they did a good job of coaching with the players they had on the field to be successful. That's huge. Guys, that's going to be huge for us moving into the playoffs as well, too. And again, make no mistake, we should make the playoffs at this point, right? I think we are absolutely one of the teams that's going to make, and I don't really want to talk too much about that, but James is doing a video tomorrow on that. And, we're looking very good to get a playoff spot, right? So again, you just got to punch a ticket. You just got to get out there, make it happen, and go from it and just keep going, right? So, at any rate, they talked about the San Francisco game, the Kansas City. Our guys were on top of it last drive. And, they gave us a chance to make games, so they've made good strides. But the good thing, specifically when it talks about the defense, is we are doing really good team defense now. That's when it matters. And I was having a conversation with a couple of football fans just the other day. They're Eagle fans. So I was like, oh, our team's going to kill everybody. You guys, nobody's going to beat us, yada, yada. And I'm like, look, that's true. You guys are doing great right now, but it only matters in the playoffs, right? And you start from zero, okay, as soon as you get into the playoffs. So if you're not playing well, you're not playing your best football into the playoffs, then it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So, again, these games gave this team character, right? And we're starting to see them play a lot better now as well, too. They're definitely more playmaking, and they practice well, and they've come out with a good game plan, right? I think a large part of this has been coaching, right? Keeping it very simple for the defense, for these younger players to step up, like a Ja Taylor, Leonard's played a little bit, Lane, some of these other guys have done a really good job. So it talks a little bit more about the defense. Basically, they talk specifically about how the defense has really had a lot of energy. And I will say this, I don't know. I'll talk a little bit more about it as well, but there's that whole linebacker and defensive lineman argument that happened on the sidelines. I'm going to give a little more thoughts into that as well, too. People are starting, and I would agree with this. This is very much what I would agree with, that people are very comfortable in their roles and the game plan. I think to some degree, and I'm just going to say this, I do feel like there were some moments this season where not everyone was bought in on the game plan and their particular roles. I'm going to give you a great example. J.C. Jackson. When J.C. Jackson was out there, he was not comfortable. He was not playing the way that he normally knew. He did not understand this kind of hybrid zone man type of formation that Brandon Staley likes to run. So it was really interesting to see how, he struggled when we all expected him to be absolutely amazing because he's that good of a player, right? So at any rate, and again, he basically just comes to say, he's like, I think you saw signs of it after the bye, but it was just starting to build, right? And it has really come alive for us, which is really great. The last 2 weeks is coming alive for us. And again, this is when you want to have your best football, and we are finally doing it right now. And again, think about this. If we get Bosa back, get Derwin James back, and we continue the energy the way we're having now, guys, there's no team that we cannot beat. There's no team that we cannot beat at this point. So I don't want to talk too much about this, but the clock management that Brandon Staley did at the very end was amazing. I mean, I remember, that was the only time I really was able to watch the game 100%. We were driving in. I'll tell you this story. I was literally dropping my buddy off at the airport after driving from Vegas. He had to hop on a flight, my boy Jason, and we were literally watching the game. We watched the Dicker, the kicker field goal and everything like that. But that clock management, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to score. They're going to score. And Brandon Staley's using his timeouts. I'm like, man, that's kind of interesting that he's using his timeouts now. And I said, well, but good point, right? If he scores, what if they score two? You never know how that's going to play out, right? You want to stop him, but save as much time as you possibly can so you can potentially, kick a field goal and win the game. Well, anyways, the way he managed that clock at the end there and calling those timeouts was masterful, in my opinion. Absolutely masterful. And I'll tell you, that is coaching, 100% coaching. Now, notice this. He gives accolades to people around him. I have a great team. Director of Football Research, Tom Arth, up in the box, special teams, Ryan Ficken, Joe Lombardi. So I know there was some questions on our lives on Monday saying, what do you think Joe Lombardi is going to be our offensive coordinator? Sure. Well, look, I think I bottom line believe he's going to be our offensive coordinator unless he gets a head coach somewhere else. Now, I would say this, if we make it to the playoffs, which I do think we will, and let's say we win 1 or 2 games, maybe make it to the AFC Championship game and, maybe even the Super Bowl, I promise you, Joe Lombardi will get a head coaching role somewhere. He will. The reason being is he already had an interview last year. And you could very easily make the case that, hey, look, man, all these injuries, you still got to the playoffs, you still scored a bunch of points. He's going to get a nod. He will get a nod because really, I think what a lot of people care about in the NFL is leadership. Joe Lombardi, from what I've seen, is a good leader. I think he's a bad play caller. That's what I think, right? He's not scheming people open. He's not being creative in the way that he's managing, right? That's been my biggest criticism with him since day one. But if you start talking about him as being a, head coach, I think, sure, why not? So it'd be very interesting to see how that plays out with him. Again, you all know my frustration with him. Now, I think the guy that might get a head coaching role right here, Ryan Ficken. He's been a special teams coordinator, I think, in the NFL for almost 10 years, maybe 12 years. But I'll tell you, man, he has changed our special teams, and we're one of the best in the league. So it's pretty amazing. So anyways, I don't really want to talk too much about that, but bottom line, they did a great job of managing the clock. Anyways, talked about 2-point conversion. It could be a possibility. Now, this Chris Rump sack was huge because it did, force them a longer field goal attempt than they did miss, which is amazing. I don't really want to go too deep into this, but what I really want to say on that specifically is it's good to see our non-premium players step up, right? And, Rump, we all know Rump was injured this season. He had some problems, and it's good to see him come in and contribute, right? And that's the thing, right? Gaziano got a sack. Kyle Van Noy got 2 sacks in a row. Obviously, Chris Rump got a sack. These are huge, huge strides in the right direction for us guys as a team. Okay, not just this season, next season, right? And getting better. And again, another guy to talk about, Joshua Kelly. He's finally healthy, doing well again. I think we talked a little bit about this on Monday, but look, we're not seeing any Sony Michel. He's not out there anymore at all. We're not even seeing any Spiller at this point. So it's been very interesting to see that we're only seeing Eckler and we're only seeing Joshua Kelly. But I'll tell you, man, the run production is getting better. And I will say this, I think we could get even better, right? Again, Rashawn Slater could potentially come back. It'd be really interesting to see if that happens, because what we could do is you can move, if Slater comes back, he could play left, and then we could have Jamari move over to the right side. You got to wonder if that's going to really happen, or they're just not going to let Jamari play at all. So it'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. Now, I do think that it was interesting seeing how this played out, right? I'm going to read a little bit of this because I do think it's really good information. Not the splitters that we were running for. They were hoping to have more run production in this game. I think they really felt like they could run the ball, and they did not run the ball as well as they wanted to. The first drive, they did a pretty good job, right? Again, Joshua Kelly got that touchdown. They did a lot of 2 deep safety shell variations, which, guess what, guys? That's really Brandon Staley's defense, right? He focuses on the 2 high safety, put a lid on it, and everything. But the thing was that they would have a big advantage of running the ball because they were going to have a light box, but they still did not make it happen. They could not make that happen. So basically, our line was not beating our one-on-one matchups, right? So they were double teaming a lot of the defensive linemen that they have, and they got a very good defensive line, guys. I mean, I would argue their defensive line, the Titans, is way better than the Chargers. They got more healthier players for sure. A lot of Pro Bowlers on that line. So again, we wanted to give the guys a chance to compete. They did fine, but again, a lot of improvement. And I think that's one of the things that I will give a takeaway, right? You can tell that the team is still trying to make the run game work, but we're still struggling to make the run game work as a whole. But, again, we were able to finish both of our red area drives with touchdowns, running the football, and that's a good thing. But they definitely need to improve. There's a lot more that they can do. And again, the other argument could be, to me, I still feel like we're getting very vanilla type of running offensive plays, right? A lot of halfback dive left, halfback dive right, some just center reads, or some zone read type running formations, which, yes, they work, but still at the end of the day, you want to see a little bit more creativity, in my opinion. Again, it goes back to Joe Lombardi, my frustration with his inability to create some interesting type of plays. So, it'll be interesting to see how things are going. So now just have to keep improving, stay on our combinations a little bit longer, just really try to improve as a team. But, you know, um, I think this team is very close to a very big running game. Um, I think we're a little bit further away from it right now. Um, yeah, and again, I don't want to talk too much about Mike Williams, man. The reality is this: that guy is just so great at catching the ball, those 50-50 contested balls. He always comes down with it, and guys, that's huge. That is such a value in the NFL or any sport in general, right? Because look, if you watch the post game show, Herbert and Williams specifically talked about, hey, look, man, just throw the ball up in the air. I will go get it, and he did it. Right? I promise you that play was just run down the seam, throw a backside fade or something. I will go up and get the ball, and it worked. Right? Um, I always ask myself this question: why aren't they doing that more in the game? Well, I think part of the reason why is they're running a lot more zone type of coverage or prevent defenses type of coverage in those 2-minute drills, especially when there was 43 seconds left. So it's a little difficult to play the same way. So typically the sidelines could be open. In that case, I would have thought they would have been protecting the sidelines a lot more because they only had 40 some seconds and they didn't have a lot of time left on the clock to move the ball down the field to kick a field goal attempt. So, anyways, just again, this is just a great little line here. Just throw her and I'll figure it out for you. He has done that his entire career. I think especially these past 2 seasons, underneath Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi, he's done a very, very good job. So it's exciting to see that he's done a good job and he's improved himself as well too. He's a clutch player. We all know that, right? So, yeah, I don't really want to talk too much about that, but again, Williams, he's just an unstoppable type of player, right? So, so this is interesting on the team that's keeping track for other teams competing for a playoff spot. Look, at the end of the day, I don't really want to go too much into this, but basically what they're saying is, look, at the end of the day, we're taking care of our own business. Obviously, you figure things out usually after the game. But it was interesting during the post game show. The interviews. They're like, "Oh yeah, did the Raiders beat the Patriots? Oh wow, that's awesome." And there was definitely a conversation around just the fact that these things happen, but they were not tracking, they were not paying attention, they were focused on the game. And I think that's the way you need to play football, guys. Don't let other teams make decisions for you. Just take care of your own business. And that's really the mindset of this team, which I think is amazing. It's been really great to see how focused they've been as a team and focused on their locker room. It was very clear to me they are not focused on anybody else but themselves, which I think is the right way to think about, going to any game. And again, we have a big one on Monday, guys. Monday is going to be a big game against the Colts. And so, I sit back and think about that game and say, you know what, we got to take care of business. And yeah, Indy was up 33-0 and they lost, right? They lost. I mean, the biggest comeback in NFL history, and they lost. And it's a mindset. It's how did that even happen? And you just got to sit back and say, oh my gosh. I mean, it's just, Saturday must just be beside himself. Like, how did that possibly happen? So at any rate, very interesting, very, very interesting. It's the Colts. Like I said, you've got good players, good coaches. You got to stay focused. And I really do believe that that's one of the things that's really nice to see with this team is that we're very focused on ourselves, not anybody else. This is great too, right? And again, we know the conversation our way, right? We're doing it our way. And, the winning culture is a mindset, right? And again, the no flinch conversation, again, shirts coming, guys. Shirts will be coming. Kick him in the dicker. That'll be coming as well too. And this is one of the things that I really like that Brandon Staley's done. He said, that's my mission coming here, right? He wanted to make sure people knew this is what our plan is. We are planning on having a winning culture. And in the NFL, you have to have that. And boy, this season, I think you could almost make an argument with all these injuries. You've had enough people with depth. And the good thing is players that were not expected to play this entire season are stepping up and playing. Look at Mike Davis. Mike Davis had almost a near perfect PFF score. And I think he leads the league in broken up pass attempts. I mean, he is playing out of his mind this year and only gets paid $7 million a year. It'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. Be interesting to see how it plays out with JC Jackson as well, too, because you have no idea how that's going to play out as well. But again, it's not just Brandon Staley. It's a coaching staff. It's a support staff. It's everybody in that entire locker room. And again, I've said this before, when you start or you're creating a winning culture, you also need the ownership to be involved. And I am so impressed. You always see Tom Telesco in the locker room. You always see the Spanos family in the locker room. That is huge, guys. That is absolutely huge. And again, they are there to win and compete. And it's been a really good thing as a whole. The entire culture has been improved. Now, again, remember we talked about, if Brandon Staley used to be let go, I would have said they'd probably wipe the entire place. I mean, they would just sterilize the entire, locker room. And the reason being is, you bring in like a Sean Payton or somebody else. Brandon Staley created a good culture, right? He has not lost the locker room, and the coaching staff has done a good job of keeping these players in the game. I mean, I can definitely point out a number of different teams that have lost the locker room. I would say the Cardinals for sure, right? I mean, a lot of these players, the teams at the bottom, Cliff Kingsbury is probably going to get let go. Personally, that's a guy let's say Joe Lombardi leaves. I would love to see Cliff Kingsbury become our offensive coordinator. I love what he does over there with the Cardinals, right? A running quarterback, what he can do. He does a much better job of rolling things out and scheming players up, because I really don't think Kyler Murray is a great quarterback, but I think Cliff Kingsbury is a much better offensive coordinator than a Joe Lombardi. So anyways, that's a whole other conversation. I should do a video on that, because I do think there are a few guys that, if they are let go as head coaches, could be a good replacement for a Joe Lombardi moving forward if Joe Lombardi were to be offered a role. Because again, if he doesn't get a head coaching role, I don't think he will be leaving our staff anytime soon. Anyways, I don't want to talk too much about this, but bottom line, you can tell that we're doing a lot as a coach to create a nice winning personality. This is interesting. Again, Phil Rivers loved the play action, right? But the thing is, he had good running backs and they had very good running games. And again, we've really struggled with the run this season. I think for a lot of various reasons, right? I think the cohesiveness on the line with Corey Linsley being out, rookie right guard, Pipkins being a revolving door, it's just we've had injuries after injuries after injuries, and it's been interesting seeing how that's played out. The play action has been good. We've had a lot of possessions in the first half, but that long 8-minute drive chewed up a lot of clock. They're trying to find that nice mix. The problem is, again, when you're not running the ball, they're not going to respect the play action at all. They just don't care. They're like, okay, you're not going to, it doesn't matter, right? Now, I will also say this too. If I have a criticism with Justin Herbert, he has not done a great job of selling the play action. I think a lot of times he just kind of shoots it out there, but not really. It's not selling the play action to the defense, in my opinion, not like some of the other teams do. Where you bring it down, then you tuck it in, then you kind of run a few steps back, and then you turn around and then throw. I think he kind of turns into his passing motion a little sooner than he probably should to maybe sell the play action a little bit more. But again, the play action just has not really – that's definitely something they can improve on the offense for sure. I really do believe that they need to get that better. Again, they played a lot of zone. There was very little man-to-man and almost no single safety from what I noticed. It was pretty much always a two high safety or two shell is what Brandon Staley likes to call it. So they wanted to take away the top play. Now, the thing that was interesting, though, too, is they had a very light box. I think he says it right here. I think they were expecting – see, and this is really why in the game plan they thought they were going to be able to run the ball a lot more, because they were going to be playing a lot more lighter boxes. They thought, okay, we can beat these guys. Here's how we do it. And the plays that they just kept trying to run obviously were not working. They were not beating the guys in front of them. So there's arguments to be made that our offensive line is really just not playing well cohesively. We obviously know that Herbert's been hit a lot. I mean, not only sacked, I think he had 3 sacks this last game, but he was hit, I think, 12 times. So those are things that, are definitely starting to stack up against that. And again, we want to keep Herbert healthy as much as possible, especially when we play more premium type defenses. Chiefs, Bills. I mean, those defenses, you got to have your A game. So it'll be very interesting to see how those kind of move forward. But anyways, let's see. I'll read this last little bit here and then we'll move to the next point. We wanted to run the football. We did not want these guys teeing off on us as in hitting Justin Herbert a ton. That's not what we wanted, obviously, right? That was not the plan yesterday. We have to continue to have the consistency on offense on early downs. A couple things that I get a little frustrated with when you start talking about play action, you start talking about running the ball on first down. I always feel like the first down run is so predictable. I'm more of a guy of mixing up the first down run and play type of conversations. Now you could argue, especially if you're trying to running the clock down or whatnot. Let's say you're up by 10 in the fourth quarter. Let's shoot clock. Let's shoot clock. That's fine. But the problem is some of these plays and these formations, they become so predictable that, oh, this is definitely going to be a run. I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's time for us to mix things up or do some play action, do something a little bit different. You know, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could make things like that happen. So I get a little frustrated with the run pass type of thing. I think we did a lot of that this game, especially in the second quarter for the most part, right? So yeah, it's a little bit interesting. On the offensive production in the first quarter, you have to continue ask it because it's continuing to happen. They're not getting the explosive plays, right? And they've had the negative plays, right? In the red zone, that was kind of crazy. That was right before the half, and then he threw another pick, I believe, in the third. So again, this is troubling for me, right? Again, I keep going back to there was a statistic I saw that Bill Belichick said going into every third quarter. I think he's got like 10 games consecutively they've scored a touchdown coming after a halftime. Right. It just goes to show you they know how to scheme people open and know how to manage the game correctly and make adjustments at the half. This is something that this team has not done a good job of making adjustments. Okay, this didn't work. Okay, let's focus on something else. And I keep asking myself why, right? Why is that the case? The best answer I could tell you is that we're just not adjusting. We're just continuing to do the same thing over and over again, right? I don't see us trying to do anything different or switching things up. I believe it was against the Miami game. We had Austin Eckler do a little Wildcat. Why aren't we doing more Wildcat? Another person that you could probably do this would be a Spiller or even probably a Joshua Kelly, right? I think a lot of those guys could do a really good job. But you have him running the Wildcat, maybe even throwing the ball over to Justin Herbert on the other side and then throw the ball downfield to, one of his guys, or he can run the ball. Lots of different options, and so again, a lot of problems staying away from negative plays, turnovers. I think our 2 turnovers were in the third quarter, if I remember correctly. So it become a bit of an issue to me, right? And it's one of those things that I just get a little frustrated. But it's like guys, like how are we not getting better, right? We're not improving the right way, right? Again, Brandon Staley says, "I stand behind what I'm saying. Explosions, stay away from the negative plays, score the ball in the red zone." Again, we gave away 2 negative plays and really struggled to move the ball, really from the whole middle of the game, right? So we started out strong, ended strong, but really the middle was just kind of a rough battle. So they got to clean that up. Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquill, I will say this, both of these guys are playing amazing. Drew Tranquill is becoming a absolute leader. Kenneth Murray is finally moving into a very good role as a linebacker. I think both of these guys are playing well together. Now, I want to talk, I did mention this before, but I did want to talk specifically about how the defensive linemen, Sebastian Joseph Day, Drew Tranquill, Kenneth Murray, kind of got at each other. Drew Tranquill specifically talked about it and he said, look, we're just heated, right? We're just wanting to be out there to compete, right? They kept talking about specific formations and specific, lines. You did this wrong. You did that wrong, yada, yada. Look, they're seeking perfection out of each other. And it's a good thing. They're holding each other accountable. And the good thing is these are players holding each other accountable. It's not coaches showing up and saying, you did this wrong. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. It's good that people are calling each other out. Now, leads to blows, leads to more hurtful words or whatever. That's a problem. That's when the coaching staff needs to step in and nip it in the bud. But at the end of the day, what I saw was passion. I saw competition. I saw people out there trying to make each other better and making sure they're doing things the right way. And I'll tell you what, Kenneth Murray is looking good. Drew Tranquill is looking really good. I'll be honest with you guys. What I would love to see these next 3 games, 3 straight up blowouts, just absolute planting donkey punches. And, maybe making, so who knows? Chase Daniel comes in for a little while, or even, Justin Herbert doesn't have to play an entire week going into the playoffs, right? So he can rest the final game of the season. I want to see that because it's good. You want to see Drew Tranquil get healthy. You want to see Kenneth Murray get healthy and get better moving into the playoffs, right? So at any rate, I don't really want to talk too much about this, but Tranquil's been a good blitzer. K9's definitely improving. There's a lot of things to be said about all that, right? The delay of game was a little bit weird. I don't really know why that happened specifically. But ultimately, Brandon Staley says it was completely my fault, right? And there's some truth to that, right? I think Brandon Staley definitely, made he didn't get the grouping on the field fast enough, right? And it's not necessarily his fault, but I think there was probably a delay in making the call. Luckily, Dicker, the kicker, made the kick anyways. So, it all worked out, but it could have been worse, right? I mean, what if that was, a 55-yard kick, right? Maybe Dicker doesn't make that kick, right? But it was interesting. So, and I like what he says. It's certainly a learning thing for him. We could have managed it better. And the thing that I have really liked about Brandon Staley specifically is that he's never happy with what they've done. He is still improving as a head coach. And I made a comment, I think it was 5 or 6 episodes. I mean, it was probably 5 or 6 weeks. It might have even been during the bye, where we specifically talked about how Brandon Staley has really improved as a head coach. And these particular situations are really improving him as a head coach, as someone that can lead and move the ball down the field. So it's really exciting seeing what he can do. I'm really happy with what he's done. On if the team could have ran the clock down as opposed to an extra play. Yeah. At the end, then it again. I mean, they could have ran it down even more, but what's the point, right? It doesn't really matter. This is interesting. The one thing that I have really liked about Joe, the game plan specifically against the Dolphins. There was a statistic that I think James sent over in our personal chat. We need to have some more of those when we pull up during our lives. So we'll get better at having those available to show as talking points. But Justin Herbert, there was some sort of statistic that he showed that he had I think it was he was 10 for 10 when he was moved outside the pocket, and his passer rating is perfect. And I think it was against the Dolphins specifically. So he just has the ability to be so accurate outside of the pocket and move. When he uses his legs, he does a lot of things very well. And that's huge, guys. That's huge in the NFL, because if you're moving, usually your numbers go down. His improves. That's amazing, right? So it's, again, he's already broken records. He already broke the record for 3 years. He's just going to continue breaking records again. We got 3 games ahead of us. He's probably going to at least put another 1,000 yards of passing on. Who knows how many touchdowns? But it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But when you got guys like Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, Everett, it does make things a lot better, right? So, and again, as he says, zing it behind your ear, which we saw last week. You remember that ball that just went right past the defender, right into Keenan Allen's hands? I mean, he didn't even have to do anything. The ball went right there. It's how the hell did that even get there? He can do that, right? I will say this. Justin Herbert is more accurate than I think any other quarterback in the league. I really believe that, right? He is extremely accurate. But you put pressure in his face, things can change, and that's one of the things that, makes him very difficult to defend. But it also means that you got to make sure you give him a little bit of time so he can adjust, use his footwork, and move forward. That was one of the things that we talked about quite a bit in the offseason, that he really wanted to work on his footwork, his 5-step drops, 3-step drops, and really just managing his feet and pushing off the right way and leading into his throws. And guys, he's just going to get better, right? He's just going to get better. So that's exciting to see. Anyways, I don't want to go too deep into this as well, too. But again, this is something I did touch on earlier. But KVN, Morgan Fox, a.k.a. Megan Fox, performing so much better these last few weeks, right? And Bryce Callahan is having a great season. Look, I'll put in Jasir Taylor in there as well, too. It's good to see people we would call depth players perform and go out there and actually contribute. But they've played very well. And again, one thing that, Brandon Staley specifically said, he says, Kyle Van Noy played really good for us yesterday. I thought maybe it's his best game. I felt like there's been a few times that KVN has been a little bit confused on what to do, right? I think he's kind of in this middle spot where he's like, okay, do I set the edge or do I rush? And you can always tell he's not quite decisive on what he's doing. And um, but again, the team as a whole is playing a lot better too. So it is interesting, right? Um, and Morgan Fox has been a stud the whole way. I would agree with this, right? But he's more of a pass rushing defensive lineman rather than an edge rusher like a Kyle Van Noy. So there are definitely different roles, but you can definitely tell that they're improving as a unit to play a lot better. So it's pretty sweet, pretty good. But Bryce has been lights out, and having him out on the field is amazing. So I really hope he stays as healthy as possible. Um, you know, so, and again, just as he says, those guys are doing it for us very well. So, anyways, um, so this is an interesting conversation. We talked a little bit about this. We talked about this quite a bit. The amount of checkdowns. I think Austin Eckler leads the league in the most amount of receiving checkdowns of any running back in the league. And a large part of that was because we didn't have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. We're not seeing that anymore because what they're doing is they're getting open, so Justin Herbert doesn't have to check the ball down. And ultimately, you have to kind of make a decision. Well, where are the gaps going to be, right? And again, you look at the way we run offensively, right? It's really about separation and beating the man in front of you, right? Or at least trying to beat the double teams if you are having one, if you're a wide receiver or even a tight end for that matter. So again, they try to stretch the coverage, they try to create space, try and create one-on-one matchup issues. That's the whole point. If you stretch the ball down the field, then it makes things worse. And even if you this is where I like not having a Guyton is a huge problem because you have a fast guy that can just run through the zone that breaks the zone. You got to remember, if you got two high safeties, you're running two shell, and you have a guy run right down the middle, maybe run right to the side. Well, guess what? That guy on this side, the left side, if he's running down to the right side, he will have to shade over to the right. Well, the left side will be completely open deep. So then whoever's running that way will be open on that side, right? And Justin Herbert knows how to do it. And then that's how all these plays are schemed up. Okay. It's not rocket science. It's really, really not rocket science. But again, knowing what your wide receivers getting on the same page of knowing what they're going to do versus their defense is a big part of it, right? You're starting to see that now. But again, stretching the coverage is huge. So when they're running those two high safeties, it's a little difficult to stretch the field. So that's when you start doing checkdowns or you do your intermediates, not your longs, or your shorter type of pass plays to get the ball out of your hands so you don't get sacked, right? And again, this is an interesting point, right? He says you can't go without making a profit. And that's a really good point, right? So at the end of the day, the theory, and clearly what they've said with Justin Herbert is this: look, at the end of the day, man, if it's not open downfield, do not try and force anything. Check the ball down. So check the ball down, check the ball down, check the ball down. And I think that's exactly why there were so many checkdowns prior to getting Williams and Allen back. Well, now even Parham, right? Because you even got another threat with Donald Parham, which I think he's a much better receiving wide receiver, or tight end than Gerald Everett. I think he's done a very good job matchup wise. So that's why there's been so many checkdowns because they've been taking off the long pass down or the longer type of plays, the 15, 20-yard plays. Anyways, and so it's not a secret that everybody in the NFL that Justin can throw the ball downfield. Okay. And that's very true. So guess what they're doing? They're taking away the downfield throw. They do not want to give up the big play. And they're basically just trying to say, hey, look, we have to be patient and we have to keep our scripts for success. And again, the check down is a plan B. And in most defenses in the NFL, and I've said this before, they don't care about the check down. They're fine with you doing that. They just don't care. They're like, check down. Check down's fine. Check down's fine. But so anyways, they definitely want to move the ball downfield. So that's going to add up to a lot of yardage for us and going to add up for the scoring the ball better. That's what we have to do moving forward. So again, just remember the baseline understanding for most of the the offensive plays that the Chargers run: one guy deep, one guy intermediate, one guy at the sticks, and a check down. That's usually how it plays out. And it's a variation of all four of those, right? So it could be four curls, could be one deep, all different option routes. So it's really an interesting situation, how this has played out. And it's nice to see this guy running the show, man. Like, he's doing a really good job. And I do think he's audibling a lot more, which I think is a good thing too. So, all righty, guys. So we're getting pretty long-winded at this point. So let me wrap up here. And so look, at the end of the day, guys, big wins. Big wins against Miami, big wins against Tennessee. Again, my best expectation is we were going to split, and we came out and won. And guys, that, make no mistake, was absolutely huge in my opinion. The fact that we stepped up and played the way we did in those situations was amazing, right? And now, guys, we're in a playoff position. Okay, with 3 very winnable games moving forward, not a problem. Okay, we should take those 3 games, not an issue. So the good news is we control our own destiny. We control our own destiny. And right now, if you look at, I don't want to give too much away from my brother's video that he's going to do tomorrow, but we literally are in the catbird seat to win moving forward. So, guys, I'm excited. I think this is great. I think this is awesome if you're a Charger fan. I fully believe and suspect that we're going to be in the playoffs moving forward. And guys, at the end of the day, we are controlling our destiny, which is amazing. So what do you guys think? How do you think we're performing? How do you think we can improve? I personally think that we're doing an excellent job. I think we have an opportunity to win out the rest of the season, maybe even rest Justin Herbert for a game. At the end of the season, you never know, right? Just go out there and perform. Let some of these guys like Derwin James and Joey Bosa get extremely healthy so they can go out there for that playoff run, playoff push. So, guys, I'm excited. Andrew Bultbros here. Again, like and subscribe. If you guys have not done that, please hit that like button. It really helps us out. It's important because more people will see our videos, more people will see what we're doing, and we can contribute and have more conversations with more Charger fans. Oh, by the way, I am in Arizona. You guys know this, but I will be at there's an event on Monday Night Football. I'll be out there with the Arizona crew here. So I'm excited to see you guys out there as well too. We'll talk more probably about that on Friday. Going into the game, and probably our pregame maybe on Saturday or Sunday. I'm not quite sure what day we're going to do it yet. But at the end of the day, guys, Andrew Bultbros, see you guys in the next one.